Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Litchfield Planning Board meeting of March 19th, 2019. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay. Well, it says appointment of alternates is the next point of business, but because we only have 3 members here, we do not have a quorum to actually hold an official, quote, official meeting of the planning board in terms of site review. So what we're going to do is we will because the applicant is here this evening. We can't vote on anything tonight. That's just the way it is. We have to have a quorum. We only have 3 people. So, and unless someone else shows up, I don't know. But I know that Steve Weber is not here tonight. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have someone who's here, represent whoever the applicant is, we'll have them come forward in a few minutes, and you can give us a brief overview of what the project is about. Essentially, the only thing is we're not going to be able to do much this evening except listen to you and hear what you have to say. If there are things that you want to bring to our attention, certainly you're welcome to do that. So I'm going to bypass the appointment of alternates because we don't have a full quorum. And I'm going to go to the roll call of members present. Michael Croto, chair.
Kimberly Queen and vice chair.
Kate Stevens, alternate.
Okay. The first thing on the agenda is public input, but this is public input dealing with non-agenda items on the floor this evening. Is there any non-agenda items that anyone from the public would wish to come forward with? Seeing and hearing none, I will close public input on non-agenda items and go to the first order of business. This is a site plan application for Edwards Auto Repair LLC for service and repair. Owners Robert and Jessica Edwards at 518 Charles Bancroft Highway, tax map 22 lot 9. Owners of the property are Joanne Smith Giles and Susan Smith Patnod. Are the applicants present this evening? Okay, would you like to come forward and sit at the table? I'm going to ask this evening, because we don't have a quorum, we can't technically have a meeting, but if you would like to tell us a little bit about what this project is about, I'd be happy to listen to your, brief presentation.
Absolutely. So we are Jessica and Robert Edwards. We opened Edwards Auto Repair. We have a shop currently in Londonderry. We have kind of had our eye on this property for a while, and we recently learned that it was becoming available for lease. We are basically just looking to open a general automotive repair business there. Work normal Monday through Friday hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Just basically specializing in general repairs, no auto body, anything like that. We don't plan to do anything to the building structurally. We're not changing anything with the building. We just simply want to move in and start work.
Jay, I don't know, did you want to just comment on?
Just maybe you could just explain a little bit about the plan if you could. I believe that you're going to be delineating some parking spaces in the front. Are those going to be, I wasn't 100% sure. There was some pavement there that's kind of broken and then a gravel area.
Yes.
You guys kind of talk a little bit about, is that going to be paved, unpaved? How are they going to be marked?
Absolutely. So as of right now, we don't have any plans to add any more paved areas to the existing driveway. We understand there are some broken paved areas, but as of right now, where it does say the broken pavement, that is our plan to just park the day-to-day customer vehicles, the ones that are in and out, quick turnover, things like that. If there are going to be cars there longer than a few days, we do plan to just park them around back where it shows the existing concrete pad. So that would be like larger jobs, maybe a motor job or things like that that may take a little bit more time. We'd like to keep the front of the driveway area as clean as possible. Obviously, we're going to be bringing cars in and out. We don't want there to be a lot of traffic congestion, anything like that. The only other thing we are planning to add to the area is a dumpster around back. I believe it should, 4-yard dumpster to the left of the existing concrete pad. And the, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, the propane tank is obviously already there. And then inside, we can move to inside. Nothing else is changing out back there. There's, like it says, a utility area in the bathroom, and there's kind of like an open space where we will put some 55-gallon drums just that contains antifreeze, oil, and that's new and used. We are in contact, or we already do have a contact for a person that deals with
Draining of the waste oil.
yes, yeah, exactly.
So that'll
and
be
the
taken away.
antifreeze.
Yep.
My understanding, there are wetlands on this property.
Mhm.
Okay, and you've gone to this, well, I'll ask that, you've gone to the zoning board.
We did, yes. We got approval from them last week. We did have to file for a variance and also a special exception because of the fact that it is in the wetland area. We had a wetland scientist take a look at the lot. There was no issues.
I noticed where on the application process that, have any waivers been submitted? Do we know?
I forget, have you received a copy
So,
of the waiver request form?
so we brought Jeff Green tonight with us. He's our land surveyor. He did receive your email last night. We do have those waivers tonight. The owners as well joined us and they signed those. So we do
So-
have 2 of those for you.
Would it be okay, Jay, if she submitted them this
Absolutely.
evening and
Okay.
we can give them?
Great.
Yeah,
Does
I can
anybody
take
have-
them and then I'll get them to
Okay.
you tomorrow.
Does anyone have any preliminary questions?
Can I just, what does general repairs mean?
So
I'm gonna jump in.
go right ahead.
Um,
That's your department.
So basically, general maintenance, tune-ups, oil changes. We'll do some of the other work on cars, like some flushers and water pumps. Just basically
Brakes.
any general maintenance that you would have done to your vehicle.
We're also planning on, we're currently an official inspection station through the state. So we're planning on transferring that over to this location as well.
As I said, we thank you for coming in this evening. I wish we did have a quorum. Otherwise, if we did, then we could proceed with the site plan review.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we do not have a quorum here this evening, so I cannot proceed with a site plan review as we normally do, which is acceptance of the application and then an approval process.
Okay.
Which we're going to have probably, and unfortunately, I don't have a quorum to set a new date for another hearing. So we may have to have you folks come back if at all possible.
Okay.
I don't know what the agenda is looking like for April. I know that we do have another site plan review coming up for something else. I know Joan had mentioned it. She's not here this evening, but
I think we should be able to.
we should be able to do it. Okay, so we'll probably schedule you for the next meeting if that works.
Do you have the date of that meeting now or?
Should be the
first
second.
Oh, okay.
First Tuesday of the month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be April 2nd.
Perfect.
April 2nd, yeah.
So
So,
we'll make sure to get you on that
Yeah,
and we
we'd
will make the
appreciate it.
notes from this meeting available to
Okay.
the board members that weren't here so that they'll have a chance to see these. They'll have a chance to look at the waiver requests
Okay,
beforehand.
excellent. All right.
so we
Well,
look
we
forward to
appreciate
seeing
it.
you on April 2nd then.
Okay.
Can I speak for one?
Well,
I'm with them, but I mean, I just had a couple of questions of the board.
it depends what your question is. What is it?
It's to do with this. My name's Jeff Green. I'm the
Okay.
land surveyor. And so I got a report from Jay
Yeah.
yesterday.
Okay.
And it had some items on there for waivers and that type of stuff. But a couple of things are like, it's already an existing condition, you know, the property's already there, we're not really planning on changing it. One of the big ones on there was a stormwater management plan, and we're asking for a waiver on that. And we're in the boundary, if you showed the whole plan, I'm only showing the front and the side that matters. There's also a residence on there. It had descriptions and stuff. And so I'm asking for a waiver of showing the entire property. I mean, we're detailing that part of it. So I think those were the biggest things. And then, and if it's all right before the next meeting, I've already put the topography on the plan that was asked for, the width of the highway. So if it's okay, we'd like to resubmit those plans for the next meeting. Is that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we.
Yeah, as long as,
If
I
it's
mean,
gonna go to the next meeting,
Yeah.
then let's do it the right way. and
right,
get it done.
and
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So if you have anything that you need to add, here's the opportunity to do it
Okay.
and get it to Jay.
And I'll work with Jay to make sure we get that.
Before the
satisfied.
next meeting, and we can,
Great.
go
Okay.
from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
So,
Thank you for your time.
thank you for coming. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's kind of,
Usually happens.
this is rare. I mean, I don't think, since I've been on the board, I don't think we've had this type of situation.
Okay.
Although I
Keeping
think it's
things-
happened
Two more
in the
weeks.
past.
Keeping things interesting for us
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
process.
So we'll see you in April.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.
Just thought of that, so I can have it on you too. I'll do that. Or just send it to you.
Send it to me. And then I'll put it in a format so you can just send it.
Okay, the next item of business for the planning board, thank you all for coming, is the master plan update for the transportation chapter. And I'm going to turn that over to our illustrious circuit rider, Carva, to give us a report on that.
So, I do have some handouts, which will be a little bit easier than following along.
I'm taking a test. Oh, is this what we printed? This is with the attachment, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Did you
okay.
already print it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Hope you guys already did.
No problem.
Nevertheless, I should have warned you that I was going to get copies. So I just want to kind of run through this, raise a few issues, and then I have another handout, which was probably in the copy as well. So I'm going to ignore page. Oh, if everybody has it, I'm going to ignore page 1. This is stuff we'll put in there, but right now there's not really a lot to talk about on that. In terms of kind of going on to page 2, this is really just information. It's just is what it is, what the state aid classifications are, and so on. As you can see on page 3, the map. I think one of the challenges with this, it's the state classifies roads the way they're going to, and it's based largely on usage, but they seem to be behind. I don't really agree with the assessment on this, and that's because they're not really recognizing Albuquerque and how it's changed. So I think this will eventually change. I kind of want to change it now, but it is the state aid classification, so we really can't. So maybe we can
Superseding.
well, yeah, I mean, maybe we can light a fire. And as you can see, as we go, further, we've talked about before what the traffic volumes looking like. But nevertheless, in the master plan chapter, we'll still put in what the state has, and then maybe put a caveat that we're not quite sure it works that way. Kind of moving on to page 4, just a couple areas that I really wanted to point out. This is where we're looking at the capacity analysis and what the level of service is on various roads. Really, there are no roads that are in really rough shape in terms of capacity. The worst we get is D, but D isn't as bad as it sounds. If you look above at the description of D, it does mean that you have a high density of traffic, but it's really level of service E and F where you start to see more significant delays. So D, I kind of look at as put anything that's D on the watch list. That's something that we want to be mindful of. And if the traffic volumes increase, we may have an issue there. And I'll kind of come back to where I think that comes into play. But when you look down on the table below, the one that jumps out, the one that I think is really to watch, we know that 102 at the Londonderry and Hudson Town lines have a high volume of traffic. But as you can see in yearly change, we've also seen some decline there. So yeah, we want to watch those. That's a little less alarming. What's more concern is really 3A at the Manchester City line. That's a D, but as you can see, we saw a 3% increase in traffic there, the second highest that we've seen. So that's an indication that, you know, if traffic volumes continue to increase, we could definitely see some challenges there. And then the next one I just noted, although it's B and it's totally fine, when it comes to yearly change in traffic, Albuquerque north of Hillcrest, no surprise, that was more than a 10% increase. So level of service is fine, but I just noted, gosh, that's a lot. Going over to page 5.
Well, real quick, what does
sorry.
that mean when? So what about like 3A at the Manchester City line is saying that we need to up the service? I'm just trying to understand, like, what are the issues there that you're seeing?
So what it essentially means is you've got a high level of traffic. It flows pretty steadily. There can be some challenges to vehicles at times of high flow. But if it gets worse, then what it means is you're likely to start to see delays. You're going to start to see some backups. You're going to have people having more difficulty turning, especially making left-hand turns, will become more and more difficult.
And what do you do to alleviate that? Like, is it just about like the condition of the pavement itself, or is it
No.
saying we add like turning lanes or something?
I mean, it could be that. What you'd have to start to do is really look at if the level of service is going to drop. And I'll come back to that because we do have to do some projections on that and we haven't done them yet. But then, yeah, it could be anything from adding turning lanes, possibly. I don't foresee this, but other ways that you could address it would be a signal if there's an intersection where you've got a particular problem,
Okay.
all the way to widening, which I can't imagine we're going to get there. But
Yeah. That sounds a lot,
and-
but okay.
some of the challenges, I think, in some of the areas that are going to be more of the triggers for congestion, and this will be a challenge, are probably on the Manchester side of the line.
Okay.
And so that'll be kind of how do we address that? Other things, though, that I think that we can do and that are important to do is particularly in the northern commercial zone, really paying attention to access management. And as we allow new development in, really recognizing that we could have some challenges in the future.
Mhm.
So limiting curb cuts, really thinking about the impact of new uses. And we're going to see more coming in that area. So we will do a projection and see what it looks like. And then we might have to revisit. Unfortunately, sometimes I'm dealing with this in another community. Traffic volumes have increased. People on the side streets are unhappy and they're having a very hard time getting out. That's the big issue, is they can't make left-hand turns.
Mhm.
And so they are experiencing a lot of challenges and there's no good solution. You know, sometimes that's true,
Okay.
and it's unfortunate and you just have to address it. And this is going to be a theme kind of running all through this, but the triggers, the access road. I mean, that's changed traffic patterns really, really significantly in many, many ways. So once we do the projection, I think we'll have a better sense.
Okay.
I don't think we're going to ever get to F, to be honest.
I just have a question about the Manchester line as well. Are you talking when you're going towards that new Irving Dunkin' Donuts to get them that Weazor
Yeah.
Road? Because my commute doesn't take me that way. I usually end up going south. So what's happening in that area in the morning or at rush
I've
hour?
never noticed. Maybe I guess
Is it
it's
just people
tough to
getting
make
off
a
the
left
highway trying to
turn.
get into Litchfield on 3A?
Yeah, well,
Is
and
that really
again,
the
right
traffic
now
road?
it's D. So D is a free flow condition. So it means that you have high volume,
It's
but
not
it does-
bumper to bumper, is
but
it?
you're not backing up. You're not bumper to bumper. You're not in very congested scenario. You're just in a steady traffic scenario.
And they're all doing 30 miles an hour in
Right.
on Brown Ave, right?
Right. So,
If they
so
were.
right now, you really
I
you
just
don't
don't-
have a you
I
don't
don't
have a
see
problem.
what's happening there because I
And
don't go that
actually-
way.
Luckily enough, majority of traffic's going north in the morning. And they're also mostly making right-hand turns onto the
Yeah.
street because
Right.
the town is coming from
Right. So they're
East
going on the
side.
highway that way.
Right.
the, so there's like a little bit of,
I just don't have a personal,
well, yeah,
vision
that's
of
what I
what's
was
happening
concerned
because I
about.
don't go
'Cause
that way.
Or
Okay.
not understanding was that, yeah, you drive on it and there's no flow issue. You don't get backed up at a light or
No.
anything.
You don't.
But, okay, but turning onto the road, I can see how that gets more
Well,
difficult
right.
as it gets more congested.
And again, it's still a free flow condition now.
Yeah.
It's what, looking down the road, if traffic volumes continue to increase, you could see a change. I don't know, because we have not done any counts in Manchester, so I don't know if they experience any backups coming off of Ray Resorick,
Mhm.
trying to get onto 3A, whether they see it or will experience, but I don't know. I haven't done that.
Yeah, I haven't obviously studied it, but I haven't seen it.
Well, and I usually come post rush hour, so I have no idea
Yeah.
whether that's really bad. But that would be interesting actually to
I
look
could
at.
see that neighborhood kind of area where, after the Litchfield line, but before the gas station.
Mhm.
I could see all that. If that gets backed up when somebody's trying to make a left turn, like when they're getting home, you're trying to make a left turn into the neighborhood and it does back up that, but it usually goes
Right.
quick. It's not a huge deal. So what happens? So as maybe we get, if they get more traffic, it kind of gets downgraded to the different levels. And
Yes.
then that's when you have to start figuring out how to address it.
Right,
Okay.
because you're looking at the two things that you're comparing are traffic volume to capacity. So where you've only got 2 lanes, the more traffic you add, the more of exactly those kinds of challenges you're going to have. It's going to be people making the left-hand turn, whether they're trying to get out of their driveway or their side street, or to your point, they're trying to turn in and traffic is backing up behind them. Those will really be the issues.
Okay.
I don't think they'll go beyond that.
All right.
We saw them move an entire road when they did Brown Ave and put the airport in, right? Didn't they move that church up to Litchfield? The CC.
Yes. they do.
Yeah,
That they actually
forgot about
physically
that.
moved, and that
Yeah.
road is no longer used by the public, right?
I totally forgot
Now,
about that.
that's another solution, not to put another
No,
road in, but
no.
people have actually moved the road.
And once we do the once we do the projections, we'll
The
have a
St.
better
Francis.
sense.
It was in Manchester.
Yeah, they
Oh,
moved
Yeah.
it. They moved it so the traffic wouldn't go there, so they could expand the airport a little bit, or at least
Right.
Brown Ave.
But again, as I noted, I mean, we might find that it's even if it gets a little bit worse, it might not get to the point where really any improvements are warranted. It's just a fact that
Okay.
that we'll deal with. So we will see. But to that end, one of the things I noted on this map, and it's not the clearest. Do you guys have color versions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You can see these green triangles. Those are our traffic count locations, and we are coming on traffic count season. So I wonder, are there any other locations that we might want to be doing some collections for this? What jumped out at me was the intersection of Hillcrest and 3A, which struck me as a location that would make sense. Because we've got a count at the Manchester line now, and then we don't have another one until Page Road. So that just jumped out at me. But I don't know if there's any others, and we don't have to make a decision now. But if anything is jumping out at you of G, it would really be helpful. We'd get a better picture if we had something at X.
So at least from my experience anyway, I think most of these neighborhoods really it's more like the Albuquerque, maybe like where Albuquerque and 3A meet.
We could do that.
Yeah, that would be good
Because
for-
I don't know how many people.
and the Hillcrest one, if that was, ever explored as an option. Remember to send
But
it down Hillcrest to 3A.
I'm not sure. Well, maybe people do go straight down Hillcrest onto 3A. When I see most people turning right onto Albuquerque
Right.
and going north back
Definitely. That's where most
Instead of-
people are going.
instead of going straight and turning right on 3A.
Hmm.
And then if you're at that intersection, yeah, I guess I'm not sure if they would if they'd go all the way to 3A to turn left, or if they then instead turn like left on Albuquerque, go south on Albuquerque to get down south. Because there's not that many like neighborhoods in there.
It looks like you have all the entrances to town.
Yeah, that's the key is
That's
figuring out
coming
what
and
comes in
out.
and what
So we
comes
have them
out.
coming in and out of
So
there.
we could certainly do one at Albuquerque.
Right. I could be wrong. I just that intersection, I don't often see a lot of people at that intersection.
You're talking where the accountant is at the end of the street, right? There's an accountant office there. Linda Jacobson.
Oh, yeah.
That intersection, right? 3A and
Is that an account? Is a dentist? Wait, 3A in Albuquerque? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, 3A and
Yeah,
Albuquerque.
she's
right?
talking about
Yeah.
where, where the Hidden Creek Golf Course, the go.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because but
That's
there would
Yeah, we
be
could have
high
that one.
congestion with the business down there, Continental Paving or the brick company, whatever's down there. So you might see more traffic over there than at this intersection here, because they might be going in and out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
It
can.
might
have
not
that
be
one.
cars is all I'm saying. It might be,
Trucks are
commercial.
okay. It's good to know about trucks.
Exactly. Yeah.
So flipping over onto page 6, we can, by the way, always come back if anybody has questions on that stuff. So the accident data is a little bit challenging. What you have in the first table is more historic, 95 to 97, and then the more recent, 2013 to 17. And in all cases, they've dropped pretty dramatically. In the first table, you could see the only area where there were any accidents, any volume of accidents or number of accidents of concern was Page Road in Albuquerque. And that's a intersection that we've raised previously, and that's not surprising. That was at the 3.2, so much higher than everything else. Everything else was, obviously no crash is good, but below average, I guess I would say. But then when you go down to the new table, you notice how dramatically it drops across the board. But Page Road is a third of what it was. Page Road in Albuquerque. We think the problem's the data, and we're starting to see this in some other areas. This is state data, and we think there is a problem with accuracy. And I think when you see this kind of a dramatic change, there's no explanation for it. You're not seeing a dramatic drop in traffic volumes. You're not seeing a major change in safety improvements. So what we want to do is a deeper dive by going to police data. And so that's going to take a little bit of time, but we don't think that we can rely on the state accident data. Again, we're saying that because we're seeing this in other areas too, where the data just doesn't seem to be of the same quality.
Okay.
So I just pointed out, but I think we're going to do a deeper dive because I do not think we're seeing those kinds of dramatic safety improvements.
Okay.
That's just intuitive. On the next page, you've got a map that shows crash locations by severity. This one had no fatalities. I think, unfortunately, that's no longer true.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I think, again, kind of the deeper dive. The ideal of the map is if you see some strong clusters, then maybe those are areas where you want to address issues, especially if they are serious. For the most part, you see some areas where they cluster, but that really aligns with where your heavier traffic volumes are. It's really you're not really seeing a pattern on here that says this intersection has to be addressed, as an example. But again, we want to do that deeper dive.
Okay.
And in part because, and we'll get to that later, should we decide that we really want to push for a signalized intersection at Page and 102, obviously safety is a factor. So I leave it at that. We'll just kind of turn the page, but we can come back. Page 8 and 9, this is, we've already gone over this information. This is the road surface management. So I included it in here, but I don't think we really need to go over it this evening. I think the bottom line is that the roads are really in remarkably good shape overall. And that I think the recommendation would be to just make sure we adhere to a regular maintenance plan and keep them that way. But there are no real issues of challenges of consequence. So I was going to move on ahead. Again, bridge conditions. I'm on page 11. You have a number. You have, I think, 3 or 4 more bridges now than we did the last time when the master plan was updated in 2002. So I thought that was interesting. 4, and they're all town, and everything is in good condition. Kind of once again. The worst is Satisfactory, and that's not really that bad. That's a 1930 era bridge, so pretty good. So no real challenges there. I'm gonna flip over to the next page, although again, we can come back and stop me if I'm moving too fast. This is where we saw a lot of changes. I talk about it a bit on page 11, but where you really see it jumping out is on the table. Table 510 on page 12. And I guess what really jumped out to me here is how dramatically commuting patterns have changed. I was really, really surprised to see this information. I think this is largely the result. There's other factors, I'm sure, but I think it's largely the result of the access road. So just kind of starting, the first one that jumped out was Nashua. In 1990, 27% of people commuted to Nashua. That's dropped both numerically and percentage-wise. It's down to 15.2. Manchester has increased numerically, but the percentage has now dropped to 14.9. What kind of things that really, so those jump out, but what also really jumps out is Londonderry. The percentage working in Derry and Londonderry has doubled. That's really interesting. Again, I think it's access road, and I think it's also the business that has been generated. Yeah, there's so much growth in Londonderry. What's also really striking is Litchfield. The number, both the number and the percentage of people working in Litchfield really jumped.
So does that include home businesses, I guess?
It
must,
does, but then I go down to the table below, table 11, it says means of travel. And the last one is work at home / telecommute. And at 4.1%, that's actually lower than the regional average. While it increased numerically, it didn't make up for that change. And so I find that very interesting. I'm not 100% sure why, but my guesses would be a lot of those folks probably work for the town or the school district. And one of the big changes that did happen since 90 is the high school opened. So I'm guessing that's one of them. The other businesses, of course, but that number just jumped out at me. That's a lot more people who are working in town and living in town.
Right.
That's a good thing. And again, another huge change was Hudson. 16.4% of people in Litchfield worked in Hudson in 1990. That's dropped to 6.1. A huge drop. I don't know why that is. I suspect, because putting in the access road doesn't change that. It means more other things are available to you, but so there must have been some employers that are no longer there, that a lot of people that were a destination. I don't know that it's worth doing a deeper dive. It just really, really struck me.
Yeah.
And I think, so other things though that jump out, 1990, 82.8% of Litchfield residents worked in New Hampshire. That's now dropped to 77.1. And the number and the percentage who are working in Massachusetts has jumped pretty significantly. Numerically, it's almost doubled. But now that's up to 21.2%. And I found that very interesting. And what's also, so that says a lot. It says, among other things, that the commuting patterns are now much more dispersed than they used to be. They're not concentrated in these 3 communities anymore. More are coming here and more going in different directions in a way. So the other thing, though, that is interesting, I'm going to come back to table 11, but I want to jump ahead to the next page to travel time. Because we have a higher percentage of people working in Massachusetts. We have a higher percentage of people who are dispersed. Granted, people are working in Litchfield and living in Litchfield, so they're closer to home. People are working in Londonderry, which is close. But bottom line is travel time has not really increased. And part of that is the access road. It means with highway access, you can go farther in the same time or faster. So that's just really interesting. What all those things say or mean, I think from a transportation point of view, it just means we're going out a lot further. What it means longer term, I'm not quite sure. The implications here are probably more economic and environmental than they are transportation. There's no transportation response. But I think what does jump out at me, among many other things with it, is that I think the impact of just that one highway improvement has been much more dramatic than I would have imagined. And I think it's outside the scope of this chapter, but the other thing that we have seen in Litchfield is an increase in median income. And I think there's a relationship there also. People are, I think two things are happening. One, I think people who might not have chosen Litchfield as a place to live previously are now, because of the convenience has increased. And I think that people are accessing higher paying jobs at the same time. The only reason you're going to Massachusetts is because you've got a good paying job. I shouldn't say the only reason, but that's a major reason why you're going to do that. That's a significant commute. For what it's worth, most of them, as you can see, are going to the Lowell area. They're not going into Boston, and that wouldn't be surprising. There's some major employers along that 495 corridor. And although I did note this, I'm back on page 12 on table 11, but I did note that the percentage of people carpooling has increased significantly, and I just wondered if there was that's higher than the regional trend, and I wondered if some of that wasn't the fact that people are traveling farther and are, making decisions to carpool. So at any rate, I thought that was interesting.
And Route 3 was expanded. When did that happen? When it went to fall?
It was past 90. So yes, Route 3 was
So that's
improved.
some
You're
positive
right.
impact.
That is a positive impact. That's right. That would incline people more to go. Yes, it would make this a more
That
likely
made it
destination
a lot easier
between
to
the
get to
two.
Lowell.
A lot easier to
And
get to Lowell.
495.
That's a very good point. So that is another improvement. And for what it's worth, it may build a case for improved transit connections down that corridor as well.
And the Manchester airport, when I had to travel for business, was very convenient.
Oh, yeah.
So that helped. I could work in Chicago and still live in Litchfield. I could just get on an airplane quick, kind of thing. So,
Right.
When was the airport built?
well, it's been there for a long time, but I mean, as far as it becoming really
The new
commercial,
facility.
it was
Yeah.
a private airport way back in the day.
It was, and there was a huge runway expansion that happened. I want to say, I could be wrong on this, 2000-ish.
Okay.
Um,
So all that like technology and stuff wasn't there before, like a lot were.
You'd have to go to Logan Airport to get to, different
Right.
parts of the country.
Yeah.
For a good
So like
flight.
there's a ton of manufacturing around the airport now. So
Right.
that builds
Yeah,
like
that goes
The
in
out.
waves,
Pettingill
but
Road
yeah.
project, I think, in Londonderry
Yeah.
has definitely expanded. You have FW Webb, you have
Right.
Pratt and Whitney, you have
Stone,
EFI or whatever.
Stonyfield, whatever. Yeah,
And the
yeah,
access
a lot of
road really facilitated that because that gave highway access to all that industrial land in Londonderry that wasn't there before. The access wasn't there before.
Yeah.
But the airport, I think, peaked in 2006 or 2007, was
Okay.
passenger peak, and now it's less than half that peak.
Oh wow. Oh, the Southwest pulled out.
Southwest is still there, but
It's not a
they
hub
went into
anymore.
Boston.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
a-
And
I
that
think
was the
because
plummet.
of the flight fares are, I think, they're cheaper in Boston, I think, than they are here at Manchester necessarily. So.
Because Southwest moved their base. They used to be based in Manchester.
That's right.
and now
People
they're
used to
based-
come here just for Southwest.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is when the recession hit, all the airlines pulled back, business travel fell, everybody pulled back. And Delta was one of the ones who pulled back. And when things recovered, they didn't recover here.
Yeah. they moved
And
back.
It's interesting to see because if you go down to the airport, you see where all these parking areas were. At one time, they were actually for parking for the airport.
Yeah.
And now they're being leased by, car dealerships and
right.
all kinds of stuff to, to put their, their cars in and stuff. So it's kind of interesting.
But was it NRPC? I don't know where I heard it, that Manchester's not doing as many direct flights. So if you have people coming in, they have to, or you have to go somewhere, you have to usually have a
That's
stopover somewhere, and some people
That's
want a
right.
direct flight. Yeah.
That's been a real killer because the lack of nonstops, so many people will opt to go to Boston. If you can get a nonstop out of Logan, they'll take it versus changing planes.
Yeah.
I hear that. I mean, I don't have data on it.
Right,
I
I've
hear
heard
that
it, but I don't know. if
all
it's
the
true.
time, all the time.
Mhm.
Because it's not just, it's cost, it's time, and it's risk. Anytime you're changing planes, there's a risk.
But the infrastructure, the airport's here, the
Oh,
highway systems are here now. So
absolutely.
whatever the next boom
It's a
happens,
great
but it
infrastructure.
is ready. New Hampshire is ready, at least in this area, on a lot of fronts.
And I've been very encouraged to start seeing ads for flying out of Manchester.
Seeing
I
that.
maybe they existed before and I didn't see them, but I've started to see a series of ads running. So, and it's making the point of convenience and lower cost parking and no traffic backup. So maybe we'll see those numbers start to.
But it's in
increase.
place, at least we're not in a crisis mode.
I-
The highways go right to the airport, a couple of
Oh,
little
no.
turns around
Yeah,
some
it doesn't
rotaries, you're there,
hurt us
kind of
too
thing.
much.
So
Really
it's
well
here.
To your point, the infrastructure's there.
Yeah.
Do we want it to increase too much? Maybe not from a traffic point of view, but.
I'm laughing at your table 12 because the 60 minutes or more, I'm usually 2 hours one way when I go to Waltham or something.
Oh.
And I'm like, so it's.
I know that was actually
It's
one
hard.
that did increase. It wasn't a huge increase, but
Oh, yeah.
the 60 minutes
2
or more
hours or
did
5, it's the
increase.
same at this point.
So I say not appreciable. If you look to each individual category, you're going to see some up, some are down. It is kind of interesting to see, where people are going.
Yeah, and also just that with the access road, it takes shorter time too.
But another thing New Hampshire will offer, depending where my
Across the
clients are, if I'm coming up 128 in Massachusetts, I have a choice listening to all the technology. Do I want to go up Route 3 or the Everett Turnpike? You know what I mean? I have a choice now of listening to,
Right.
before you had one road in,
Yep.
one road out. You're at the
I know.
mercy, but now we have some choices.
We do have some choices, and I love it when they interrupt me and say,
Worst case, 95 north.
you might want to consider taking an alternate route. Traffic ahead. Looking down at table 13, just note that the last column hasn't been filled in yet. That's where we'll update the level of service based on the projected traffic volumes.
Okay.
So as you can see, we are projecting increases in a number of areas. So we will take a deeper dive into that. And then kind of moving on to page 14. So as we discussed the last time around, one of the issues that came up was the possibility of an intersection, a traffic signal at the intersection of Page and 102. So we did do the Warren analysis for that. And that's obviously a prerequisite. I'm not going to go through a whole lot of detail on here, but basically where you see the yellow highlight, it means it triggered a warrant. So, and then you kind of go on to the next page on 15. And again, you'll see where it shows in yellow, it means it did trigger the warrants. So what that means is it didn't trigger them across the board. So this basically what this says is justifying a traffic light there is possible. Some warrants are triggered, not all. So it's not a slam dunk. So again, we need to do a deeper dive. And so what our transportation planners are suggesting is that we go out and do turning count movements at that intersection at peak hours so that we can get that deeper dive. And at the same time, as I mentioned before, we're going to go into the police department accident data and see if we come up with a better number. So it's not quite a yes yet. It's not quite a no yet. We've got to look at it a little bit more closely, but there is a chance that we really could make an argument that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, as you see, as we looked at before, the worst levels of service we have is on 102, and I can't imagine that's a surprise for anybody. So will that be better or not? I don't know.
Is there, but isn't that intersection in Hudson?
It is.
So it would just be us going to Hudson to,
It's a state
Argue
route.
that?
So yeah, we would be talking to the state and we would be
And
talking to Hudson ultimately. Yeah.
okay.
So,
Yeah,
And-
I know it's wanted. I've heard grumblings for years about people wanting a light there.
well, yeah,
At least
and
the
there's-
ones turning out, yeah.
there is a heavy volume of traffic there, and obviously the key will be what will the impact, to traffic flow on that.
Yeah.
And that's why we really do need to do a deeper dive and see, what's the broader impact, and is it a positive or a negative
Mhm.
for that route? So
Alright.
we will look at that a little bit more closely. And then just kind of going on to 17, I thought, these were not looking at the table so much, but at the lower part of the page, these are really kind of the issues that have been identified so far. Again, for the most part, there aren't really serious challenges and there aren't major improvements that are necessary, but the traffic calming, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more again, the signal that we mentioned, to the point earlier, I think it's, the importance of stressing access management on 3A and 102 to at least minimize the impacts of traffic increases. And then we had, the only improvement we had really talked about for bicycle and pedestrian was the possibility of putting in a similar path along parallel to Hillcrest. And some of the conversation around that was, well, if the Warren article passes to acquire the additional land on Hillcrest, we've got that opportunity, and it looks like that happened. So that may be, I think, an opportunity to explore an extension there. We are currently, or soon I should say, we're going to be working on a bike ped plan, and the state's working on their bike ped plan. We're going to provide some input on that because Litchfield is a part of that. And interestingly, they did pick up on Albuquerque this time and shifted the state recommended line from 3A to Albuquerque, at least for most of its length. So I thought that was interesting. And that's almost certainly what we'll wind up reflecting. That just makes sense.
Okay.
And then a couple of other things we talked about. We did talk about, is there an interest in any kind of paratransit, any kind of shuttle van pools, and electrical vehicle charging stations. And I do think that's, something we should at least have some discussion of, even if we don't get into it in great detail. And then I, throw in passenger rail. It's always there. Is that an issue? We can have some conversation around that as something that may have an impact. So I left it at that, but then I did have, because we had talked about examples of, and that's another handout. I don't know if people printed it. If you didn't, I brought it. I will pass these down.
Oh,
so
yours
maybe
is
you did,
color,
maybe you
though.
didn't.
I like color.
You like color?
I'll take the color one. I'll keep my book.
I'm okay. Either way.
So I just threw these out.
Unless Joan would want to cut up.
I'm just kind of starting with the first slide. And I think it makes sense to include some examples of these. Whether we want to make recommendations is a different one. But I think the first one is obvious. Why do you have traffic calming? It's clearly to make streets safer, reduce traffic volume, and mainly really reduce speed, not so much volume. And then what are the key ways in the next slide? Narrowing the width of streets is really, really key. Reducing side distances and curves, and adding texture. Those are really the main techniques. And I'll kind of come back to what I think makes the most sense. But I figure we'll look at some of these examples, going on to the next page. The first one has bike amenities, and the next one has just traffic calming. And really, they often go hand in hand because putting in bike lanes is frequently a traffic calming mechanism. In addition to accommodating bicycles, you've got this green stripe down the road. It does tend to slow traffic. And we'll have some better examples of these, but you can see the island, the split island in the middle, speed bumps, and what they call neck down, which we call bump outs more typically. Going down to the next slide, textured pavement is very commonly used, especially on a residential street, just because you're going to feel a little bit of rumble. I'm turning on to page 3 now. Some of these, I guess I could have put these as bigger individual ones, but I put them in just for fun. Some of these are really ad hoc. That the guy sitting there in the chair, that's clearly, some local folks having fun. But you can see, and I'll have some better examples. The next one to the right of that is just a textured crosswalk. Very, very simple. It's not a bump, but again, it has that effect of a visual in front of you, which tends to slow you because of the color change, and then a little bit of a rumble. The little stamped frogs just being cute, but it's the same kind of a thing that the guy in the picture above achieves. It catches people's attention. It tends to get them to slow down. And then next to that is one that's a slightly raised crosswalk. And then you can see the sign. Again, it's supposed to alert you. The little thing below it in the middle of the road with the yellow spikes, I hate those, but I put them in because they're done. They're cheap, they're easy to install. That's typically in a subdivision street, residential street. And then basically after that, we just have some different examples. These raised crosswalks or tables, speed bumps. Personally, I don't like speed bumps. But nevertheless, that is a method that people use. We're really talking about Albuquerque, so that's not something I think that makes sense for an Albuquerque. I'm flipping the page again. And in the first slide, you see again, it's that median, that landscaped median, and it has the effect of it's visually something ahead of you. It slows you down, and around it, the lanes narrow slightly. So it's just forcing people basically to slow down while looking somewhat attractive if it's kept up. And the next one, what's interesting about the next one is that if you're unsure as to whether putting in a speed bump or a raised crosswalk is a good idea or not, that's temporary. That's just stretched across the road. So that's a measure that could be done on a test basis, and then you could pull it up. Kind of interesting. This out there. And then we keep on going out again. The next page, what's called a bulb out is also known as a bump out. That's very common, especially if you have a crosswalk associated. And you can imagine it does the same thing. Traffic circles are kind of like that little yellow thing in the middle of the road. This is probably not something you'd want to do in an Albuquerque, but it is something that's done. I saw a lot of those when I was in Seattle. Because they had grid neighborhoods and people flying through. They are a pain, though.
Yeah.
And then, of course, going to a bigger roundabout. That's slide 13. And then going down to the bottom of that page, and that's on 7, then you get to a modification of the raised crosswalk, which is the platform. And that's basically you're at a 4-way intersection. So what you see in pinkish there is instead of that raised stamped strip, it's the whole center. So you've got texture there. Again, you've got 4-way crosswalks around that. So the idea is you want to slow people there. That's something that actually could be considered at a 4-way intersection right up the road here where you don't have stop signs. That's the kind of place where something like that could happen. And then, although I will say that right here at Hillcrest, not to say that you want to put in one of those, but the crosswalks are less obvious than they could be. A color change might be something for us to think about. And then again, I'm not crazy about slide 15, but realigning intersections to basically make them more challenging is a method that's used. And then the last one I put in is pop-up calming. And the reason I put that one in is because, as you can see here, they just used some sort of green tarp-like material, cones, plants. Why I put that in there is because sometimes with some of these things, you really aren't sure if you want it or not, or whether it will work or not. It's possible to do these things with inexpensive materials and try it. before you commit to any kind of infrastructure. So yeah, just threw that in there for fun. Really, I think whether we want to include some examples in the master plan or not, or whether we want to make any recommendations, I think that's something that we want to think about. I would say, and this is not an engineering perspective, but Albuquerque at this point is designed, for a comfortable 50-mile-an-hour speed. And so realistically, you can put signs and you can put the thing that says your speed is going, and you can beef up enforcement, but when enforcement isn't happening, it's designed to encourage speed. So it's something to think about. If I had to say, what's the most effective, probably thing to do? Just pull in, expand the shoulders. The lanes are wide. Just bringing in that stripe will make a difference. It'll narrow the lanes, obviously, but the perception, I think, of comfortable speed could change. So of all of these things, I think that's really probably the simplest thing to do.
And if we were going to do that, like actual road bikes don't ride on the bike path because it's wavy. There's people
Right.
walking,
That's right.
like they're going like 30 miles an hour. They don't want to be passing people walking their dog. So if we were going to say we should bring the shoulder in, I think we should say just paint a bike path.
If you brought the shoulder in and you painted it green or another color, but if you delineated, that would have the effect of reducing speed and making it safer for bikers.
What was that old-fashioned sign, thickly settled,
Yes.
30 miles an hour? It was something to remind them that there's
Right.
kids running around that street.
Oh yeah. But there's a real visual to that. I mean, if you pull in that stripe, you've got a good amount of width out there, and you already do have the stripe and a little bit of shoulder.
But people do have to take rights and left off of it. So, and everyone tries to go around you when you're taking a right. They're going into oncoming.
Oh yeah.
But not that there's traffic coming, it's clear, that's why they're doing it. But, so if you pull it in, I don't know if they're going to know to stop behind you when you're trying to turn into your street.
They will, because you're not going to pull it. I mean, you're pulling it in only a bit. You're pulling it in a couple of feet.
But I think signs with kids' pictures on them, like chasing a ball, like just to, reminding them, just to
Do that too.
nudge that if there's 10 of them, you couldn't have missed all 10. Well, maybe they could have, but. I think it's
and
too
we
late.
can mull that over as to whether that's a recommendation.
Because the
we wanna make.
sidewalk's on one side, whether, whatever side of Albuquerque you're on, right?
Right.
But the streets are on this side, so you have to cross Albuquerque to get to the sidewalk.
You do.
That's, so maybe some of the walking,
But
you
are
got the
those
little
crosswalks?
crosswalk paint across the street or
You've
something,
got crosswalks at Hillcrest.
or signs that
I
there's
think it's
crossing
only at the
happening.
stop sign that there's a crosswalk.
I think it's only, yeah. And that is something else to look at as just
Do we need
that,
an actual crosswalk?
just putting that crosswalk.
Some of the
But if you really
neighborhoods?
want to make it more effective, you probably want to use color so that
Yeah.
it's visually clear and even texture. The stamped pavement type one just gives you a little bit of a rumble. If you don't want to do that for maintenance reasons, I think at least the color differentiation. But I mean, for me, I do like the concept of widening the shoulder and making them bike lanes. There's a lot to be said for that. Because to the point, for a road bike,
You're right, they are on the road more than the
Yeah, and
path.
we had one, someone got hit, I think, on a bike a couple of years ago. It might have been on Hillcrest, though. And then, people were saying, like, well, why aren't they on the bike path?
And they don't want the motor scooters on that sidewalk either, right?
Right, yeah, I don't think you're supposed to have.
No, so they're probably
motorized.
going to be in the road anyway.
and you do. I mean, I see groups of people. I see strollers, and it
Yeah, you
can be
can't ride
awkward.
at 20, 30 miles an hour on that thing without it being dangerous. It's like less dangerous for them to be on the actual road. The road cyclist, not like a kid on the bike. Like they can be on the bike path.
So we have like the street, a strip of grass, the sidewalk. There's nothing to stop a car from going over the strip of grass to the sidewalk.
No,
So you have some of these pictures of lifting, not that we need it now, but I'm just saying, you're walking and you have no idea a car could be coming.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen,
Headphones
obviously.
and all that.
Hasn't happened, but
hasn't happened here.
yeah.
But I mean, fortunately, you do have separation and sometimes grade separation, which helps.
Yeah, but the visual, you're right, or the drainage ditch, might stop somebody.
Well,
But there
going
are
up the
places where
sidewalk,
it's not
yeah.
going to stop you. If they
Right.
veer in, they're going to get you.
I think, but we're talking about more just day to day.
Stopping the speed, just
Slowing the
making them
traffic
pay
Slowing them
attention.
Yeah.
slowing people
What's
down.
that? Behind every ball there's a child, whatever. Just have some signs saying,
That's not a bad idea.
we don't like
to
our pets being roadkill, kind of thing.
remind people, right?
Maybe the traffic thing saying you're doing 45 and a 35, just flashing it. Don't do anything, just to remind them. That's
Those are
all.
ways too.
That might be. I don't know how expensive those things are to rent or whatever. I wonder if those would be.
Are they solar powered?
I think I heard Steve says that
Oh, we
they're-
already are getting
They-
one.
yeah, they got one.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
Oh, okay.
they're gonna use it.
I agree. There's, what do you call those bumps on the road? That's not good for snowplows.
No,
that
I think
can't
bumps are
see.
problematic.
Yeah, that's
But-
a little extreme for Albuquerque.
Color and texture, I think, are ways that can be effective, and lines coming in can be effective.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I don't think you want to look at bump outs. I don't think any kind of impediment in the middle of the pavement makes sense.
Yeah, it's more cost too,
It's usually-
maintaining the greenery in the middle
Yeah.
and all that.
Right.
In some parts of Albuquerque, again, I'll be about, I live off of it, but I go slower in certain parts than others because it's a big open stretch and you just, there's
Yeah.
nothing stopping you. Your mind's going,
Sure.
But when it's street, you're going slower.
When you have things that you have to watch out for, you go slower.
Exactly.
And when you have a perception that there's a safety challenge in going faster, you don't. That's narrow roads. You don't go as fast because you don't feel safe. So
But you did say the traffic's, it looked like going up 19% projected. I mean, it's just going to be more and more. That's all.
there will be more.
There'll be more traffic.
Yes.
That's the reality.
That's the reality. And it was designed probably for 50 miles an hour. That's another reality.
It's another reality, and I will say that it was designed at a time when that's what the playbook said,
Mhm.
and now it
Mhm.
tends not to say that. So, but it was well designed. I mean, it's
No, I
it's a great
agree.
road.
It's
a great
definitely
road.
well designed, and it's a beautiful road.
And of course, the other option is well, maybe it should be 40. Maybe it should.
Maybe.
Maybe that's okay.
I wouldn't have a problem with that either.
Right. Well, at very least, we could come up with a couple of examples and show what it might look like.
Okay.
And then we can decide whether it makes sense to. We could go as far as to maybe recommend some improvements, or we could be with I'll say less committal. We should consider looking at these.
Okay.
As well. Obviously, before the town ever did anything, there need to be a broader conversation,
Mhm.
both with public safety as well as with people who live, which is most people in town.
Yeah, there you go
It's
along
most
that way.
people in town. It's really interesting. It was really,
And
really
now we
effective.
we have the fire station now
That's right.
over here. So now you're gonna have, fire trucks coming.
Yeah.
Maybe you
Yeah,
don't,
well.
but
It's, so I don't know how that's gonna, change the dynamic. I don't know. We'll see.
It could.
Yeah.
It could change the dynamic. That'll be interesting.
I don't know how town administrations work, but the safety stuff that we're trying to put in or think about, does that help insurance for the town if we implement some of these things?
Oh, I'll have to ask that question.
I have no
don't know
idea. I
that.
don't even know what we have for insurance in the town. But if you're making it safer.
Something.
I don't know that that's on the list of factors that they consider, like fire stations.
Like the
and
town might have a
hydrants and-
rating, I have
Right.
no idea how it works.
That's a
But
good question. I don't know the answer.
but
to
maybe,
that.
we're a safer town. But you're right about the fire station, yeah. Yep.
Well, I'm just saying, you're gonna have emergency vehicles coming out of there. So, things are gonna start to happen, it, could affect.
It's going to be new activity. Yeah, it's going to be new and different type of activity. That's for sure.
But I think you're right. We have probably some low impact moves we could make to make that road, at least, even if it's 20 or 30% safer, it's better.
Yeah, I think that's right. So that's it. I think we've got a few more things to do. What I'd like to do, though, is hold off on kind of coming back until we've had a chance to get out there in the field and do some of those turning count movements at Page because I think that's key. And then we can add some counts also at Albuquerque in 3A.
Mhm.
The other thing that we're also looking to do, which doesn't necessarily have to play into the chapter, but we do want to start getting bicycle and pedestrian counts along the path on Albuquerque. And because right now we have no data. We have no idea how many people are using it.
Well, are you trying to do it in the next like month or
No.
like season, or because there's nobody out there now?
Yeah, no. What we want to do is we've got the equipment to do bicycle and pedestrian counts.
Okay.
And we've been doing them for the most part, with the exception of the rail trail in Nashua that goes to Air, where we have a stationary counter. It's been largely ad hoc, and what we'd like to do is get in a more regular program. And so it would be season long, and we would pick times and dates over the season, making sure that we start while school's still in session.
Yeah.
And then, probably continue until like September.
Okay.
Wouldn't be out there every day, but I think it'll be interesting to see, and at least we'll start to get a baseline of data. I see people using it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they do.
Wonderful.
They do.
I have
Should
no
not find,
idea how many are using
Yeah.
it. I think
Right.
it'd be good to get that info.
When we were doing the community design chapter, one of the gentlemen that came in brought up what was a vision in the past was if you go the other direction of Albuquerque where the high school is, and you get to the end, I guess that's Page Road or whatever's at that end. I think what he said, and I have to look it up, the vision was to keep Albuquerque going all the way straight through to 102 that way. I thought that's what he said. I can recheck, but
Interesting.
I think that had to do with part of that circumferential highway.
But
I
they
don't
say
know.
There was,
But I mean,
there was a
if we're
time when the
looking at
circumferential was
that-
going to be there.
Because I think his point was if that really was going to try to be a vision, you could blight that land now while nobody's on it, was what that person was saying. So, if we're trying to find future, if we're thinking of certain things to do, maybe research what happened in the past, I can ask him again. But when you get to the end of Albuquerque, get that Page Road intersection everybody's talking about,
Yeah.
I thought he said the vision of the town might have been to keep going straight and extending Albuquerque further out to 102.
And putting like
Not that
businesses.
wouldn't make the road faster. Of course it would, but
I think they were
maybe it's a
talking-
traffic issue. I don't know, but Should we
Now
talk
that
about-
you're saying it, I wonder if Joan might remember.
And I can ask
Kevin Lynch, that was
him again.
Yeah, but now that you're saying it, I've got a memory of it continuing past Page Road.
But when we were doing that community design chapter, he's like, well, if you're looking at the 20, 30, 40-year vision, if that's what it was, maybe the town should look at getting that land now, or maybe it has it and just blight it before any building's done on it.
I'll take a look. That's an interesting
Let
thought.
me also, I'll check up with him. He was here with us.
It was Kevin Lynch. I think.
I think it was Dr. Kalawa,
Kalawa.
Stephen Kalawa.
Okay.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't want to misspeak for him.
No,
I
you-
want to
you-
double check what he said.
Could be
But we're doing transportation. I think if that was part of the plan, or that's part to alleviate a problem, or maybe it's.
I've also got a memory.
I don't want to make the town boom either. I'm just
I've got a
saying
memory of a connection.
some kind of a. I'll check with.
3A that was south of Page. That's what's sticking in my head. That it intersected with Page, and then it went west.
What did? So Albuquerque. So Albuquerque again's now at Page, and then you have like a Cutler Road, right? You can do a quick left and a right.
That's
Yeah.
sticking in my head that it would have accessed industrial land back there and then continued on to 3A between Page and the Hudson line. I could be wrong on that, but that's kind of sticking in my head. That could be wrong, but I know that circumferential was in that vicinity
Yeah.
too. So whether it was envisioned to intersect there, I'm not sure. But that's an interesting thought, continuing it.
If it was part of that project, or again, things morph. I don't know.
We can
I just
at
want to
least-
clarify what he said.
You can at least
Right,
look
it
at the
should-
land. From a traffic point of view, I'm
Thought
not
about
sure what it would do.
Chapter. Yeah. It should be thought about for the chapter.
Yeah, and he thought about it for the community design chapter because we were trying to think 2040,
Right.
2050 at that point.
Well, it'd also be interesting to see whether that would be a better intersection at 102 than Page.
Which one? You're saying, so instead
In
of
other words,
fixing.
exactly, instead of
to
fixing
get the
Page
traffic
Road,
to-
maybe you look
We
at
have
a
control
different.
over it.
All right, I'm not trying to introduce a problem to Litchfield, but.
I'm just trying
But
to
I
think
think
of,
it's been on the table, but I'm not sure in what.
I'm trying to
what
think of
way.
what's on the Hudson side. And I think there's a small industrial park there,
Mm.
but I'm not sure. We'll look at it. Why not? Let's take a look at it. Anything else we should be thinking about or looking at? You don't have to
I
decide
can't.
now.
There's a lot of things, but I think
Big
we
picture.
covered a lot.
Wait, is
Um,
that
I think, the focus, I think, is probably going to be, we've been talking about it all tonight at Albuquerque, obviously. I think that's the center of, everything that comes into town and goes out. And it's sort of the epicenter, I guess, is of Litchfield in a way.
Yeah, it is.
And so I guess, thinking about that and yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's the main artery for people now,
Right.
but it's also where the main public facilities have shifted,
right.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's
I know when we were talking about bridges, something came to mind, culverts. And I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago that NRPC
Mhm.
did a assessment of
Yes.
culverts in the region. And they did a report on it. And I think they picked the ones that were the best and the ones that needed improvements and stuff like that. But I think if you're thinking of bridges, I think culverts should be part of that conversation as well, because,
I'll check on that.
yeah. Anybody have anything else you can think of?
We're not gonna have any transportation on the Merrimack River, are we? Just asking.
I haven't heard of any.
Anybody have any
ferries from-
flotation
Yeah,
devices that are going
right.
across the river at all? For whatever they are.
Well, we could
Somebody
look-
was
we-
joking
we
with me
could
they're
look
gonna
at
have
the
rafts going back and
historic
forth.
ferry crossing.
Yeah. What were they talking about? Those, actually, he was talking about inflatable stuff you can put a car on and take it across. I'm like,
Oh, that would be interesting.
okay, culverts.
Although at Morse Falls, they did the Eagle Scout project. And it's, if you get a chance to go down there, it's very nice. They actually have little stanchions, and they put like the history of, like the Middlesex Canal and this whole story of how that originated. And they have different stanchions as you walk down into the trails of things that, basically historic.
Pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Were
Yeah.
those new? Are they?
Yeah, they put them in, I want to say a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just
Yeah.
down there a little bit ago, and
But,
we were like,
so,
"Oh, these are
it's
nice."
pretty cool.
Like, I don't remember these before. We didn't know when they showed up.
So,
Is there any like buses on 102 that have stops that we don't know about?
No.
Close, because we're talking about
Yeah, we
transportation on that end of town.
we have the transit expansion project that's ongoing now, which is looking at expanding Nashua Transit. I can't say 102 wouldn't be something that's talked about. That's always a possibility.
do we know, certainly we've been talking about Litchfield, but within our region, are there other, Hudson would be the one I can think of, or Manchester or something, other town, or Londonderry towns there may be projects going on that may have a, I don't know, like a regional impact or something on
Oh, yeah.
the transportation piece for us.
Oh, I think so. I think Londonderry has had a lot going on, so there's no question that that's had an impact. I'd have to look at exactly where it is, but Manchester approved a zoning change for a pretty large multifamily development near Litchfield. So that's definitely one that potentially could have an impact. That's probably one. I would certainly hope that would be viewed as regional impact if it goes to the planning board, so that we'd have a chance to get some notices on that.
Yeah.
But that's definitely one that we should keep our eyes on. And there's some development in Hudson,
Right.
right south of the border. There's a residential development going in there.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some impacts there. And
So
there
that's true. You're right. There is a development that's going up there. That's right.
So I would say on both sides, you're going to see some activity, and inevitably those will mean they'll have a traffic impact. Of course they will.
I just need a refresher. I'm smiling because I forgot, so please just bear with me. The Manchester Airport is made up of land in Litchfield, Londonderry, and Manchester, right? Is Litchfield
I
land
don't
part of
think
that?
there's any Litchfield.
Okay, because I was asking what part of, I'm looking at the map here. What
Yeah,
part?
I think it's more of it in Londonderry than in
I
Manchester.
thought, why are we considered part of that then? I thought for some reason the three towns were.
I've never.
All right, I'm gonna have to look up what I'm thinking. I was just trying to think if Litchfield was part of it, the land touched it somewhere. I wanted to see it up there.
I wasn't aware of it.
I don't know. It's been a long week. I'll take a look.
There might be noise ordinances or something over it. Over us. For the traffic patterns.
That's very possible.
I'll have to look at that. Why do I think it's part in Litchfield?
I don't know. But I think to that point, there could be impact zones there could be height restrictions
Yeah.
that are.
No, I thought we had some, I thought for some reason Litchfield land was there. Maybe not. I'll look at that personally.
It's possible.
I'm not sure why I always think we have three pieces. Three towns had land around that airport.
Right.
I mean, whether they're using it or not, but maybe they own some of it.
So we've got some homework to do.
Yeah.
I think we do.
I thought that ended years ago.
So I think, obviously we have some great ideas. Thank you, Jay, for providing us with an overview of what you've been working on. We look forward to more information as it comes, and obviously you'll be working on that.
Right.
So, and we can have another discussion maybe with the rest of the board, when
Yes,
people come back,
absolutely.
obviously, and see what their input is on this as well.
Right.
So look forward to that as well. So thank you very much. And so what's the next plan of attack, do you think? You're gonna be doing these studies, obviously, and then you're gonna be putting data together?
Yes.
or-
So what I'll do is, we have all of this information. What I will do is come back. One piece that we still need to do is, as I noted, the level of service for the future traffic. So I'll come back next time with that.
Okay.
And then the next time we talk, we'll have had a chance to go out, do some additional counts. We'll look at those turning count movements so we can kind of solidify whether we think we could justify recommending a signal at Page. That's really the key. And then in the meantime, I'll see what I can find out about the extension of Albuquerque to 102. That would be really interesting to look at further. So we'll come back with a little bit more data, and maybe we'll look a little bit more closer at I've lost my train of thought. At looking at some of the traffic mitigation measures, the traffic calming along Albuquerque. I think we kind of talked about really three things seem to rise. One is kind of focusing mainly on signage. One is a possibility of narrowing the lanes and putting in delineated bike lanes. Or I guess I would say the possibility of defined crosswalks at some key locations.
I think it was at the town meeting. I don't know if it was, might have been Jason Brennan who mentioned it, but the beautification committee was thinking of putting a sign up at the corner where the accountant's offices, when you're coming up Albuquerque to go up to Eden Creek. There's that piece of land there on the side. They were going to put a sign there.
Where
Basically,
the house was?
where the house was.
Okay.
A sign is basically showing you like the directions to the town hall, the municipal offices, and all that stuff. Put it right there so that when people turn, they'll know to go down Albuquerque. And that was something that was
Oh,
proposed.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
Oh, you're right, because there's a police station sign down
Right.
at 3A at
yeah,
Hillcrest.
which I thought
but
was
that doesn't-
really good
make
idea.
sense
I mean,
anymore.
if you put that there, it's certainly,
I mean, it is a good idea because unless you know, you don't see the sign.
you're right.
Yep.
So something to think about.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you very much,
All
Jay.
right.
Appreciate it. And obviously,
So
you
until
guys
next time.
we'll continue on with this and obviously do some more work on it.
Yeah, and the field work, not surprisingly, will take us, certainly the better part of April.
Right. That's understandable. So, okay.
We don't put our equipment out until the danger of snow is past. Maybe that's pushing it a little bit. We can put people out there, just not. our
Yeah,
equipment.
yeah.
Where did you say you were doing the pedestrian counts?
We have to pick the locations. I think that optimal is probably between the high school and Darrah Pond.
Okay.
And then probably another location. And I'm open to suggestions as to good locations.
You're talking off of Albuquerque?
Yeah, on the path itself.
Right across from my house on Newstead, there's always traffic, kids,
So we could-
scooters,
we-
dogs,
Is that
baby
north or
carriages.
south of Hillcrest?
Huh?
Is that north or south of Hillcrest?
I'm not sure. I'm on the 3A side of it, of Albuquerque, not the high school side, the other
So
side.
by like the new tennis courts?
I'll go further down. Yep. So if the tennis courts are on your left, I'm further down. Because
Oh, okay.
the whole neighborhood's
Towards
walking all in there.
Towards Manchester.
Yeah, you have about 8 streets of people
Okay.
walking in
Yeah.
that whole
So
area.
we'll look at something in that area.
It's very,
Like if
It's
we're
great.
looking,
at all times of the day.
like if we're looking to get like grants or something for more sidewalks on,
Mm.
because we have the stuff on Albuquerque, but on the cross streets like
Mhm.
Pinecrest, Hillcrest,
Right.
Page,
Mhm.
that way. How do you need numbers for that, or is that more like
It's come to voters a few
vote-
times
like that kind of
to
thing?
do that, and it's been turned down.
On the side streets?
Yeah, like, it wasn't like Pinecrest and Hillcrest, some of the sidewalks were turned down from the voters, right?
Oh, I thought it was we didn't
Hmm.
get funding from the state or something. I could be
I'm
wrong.
not sure where they get the funding from.
Mhm.
There was
But
like a
Joan might
grant
know
they
with
were
the older
trying-
Warren articles that came up.
Okay. They tried to do that.
Right, and these do come up. I mean, we just went through a funding round. Recently, it'll probably be coming up in another couple of years. So
Okay.
having some data is helpful
Yeah.
for
Like,
something like
yeah,
that.
they're kind of crossways because
Yeah,
there's a lot of, I mean, you can see it on the maps. There's all the neighborhoods that connect to those, and even though they're not main arteries, but
Right.
people are kind of trapped in their little neighborhoods
Right.
unless they risk walking on those roads with no shoulder. So
and I mean, it is a master plan. It's a guiding document. If we feel that there are other areas where we want to at least show potential sidewalk connections, then we should, because that's something that we could then look back to. Kind of again, grant opportunities come up. We can say, the master plan recommends something in this area that strengthens an application typically.
okay,
So
I think we should.
Yeah.
For pedestrians, at least enter something in there because I see people walking on those roads all
Sure.
the time, and they're in
Baby
the
carriages,
grass
yeah.
and
Right.
weeds and everything. But
And there is no real good place for them to walk. There's hardly any room.
right, there's no shoulder. or
If anything, that's the white line and maybe this much because you got a wall or trees, there's
and
nothing.
Hillcrest and Pinecrest are good candidates.
Yeah.
I'd say for that. We'll
And I
look
know-
at that for sure.
And Page Road too, I think I've seen people walking
Yeah,
just on the sides,
and that's kind of tough
and they're
too.
it's with all the building and stuff down there too. That
Right.
actually could increase.
We can look. We'll look at all three of those.
Okay.
I mean, there's really no reason not to take a look at that.
No, we have like 8 senior development in town.
Mhm.
Maybe we could look at a shuttle bus for all of the 8 or something. I don't know. I'm just,
We can. I mean, one of the things we did talk about was looking at paratransit or special transit. I think that's definitely something that we can
build
look
a
at.
case for with 8 of the developments, That's a
Yeah.
big population.
Yeah, that would be nice. Then
There's a couple of models that we could take a look at.
make it easy for people, like remove excuses of going out, kind of thing. Like
Remove the excuse.
not going.
Well, I know we
out,
talked
removing
about getting
excuses
them
of
to
not
doctor's
going out.
appointments or
I know
food
that
shopping,
that's
but I'm
actually-
thinking if we have 8, maybe they'd make special stops at all 8.
They don't wanna bother doing it. But if there's someone coming to pick them up, it might encourage their.
I swear Litchfield's
Keeping
part
on
of
the
that
feet.
airport. It's bugging me. I'm gonna find it.
All right.
Something.
I know it is.
All right. Committee reports. Are there any reports from any committees?
Heritage Commission, we've missed 2 meetings. One was weather and one was on voting day. So we had a lot of people, we're obviously validating the voting. So
How is that going? Is it,
we already developed the bylaws. We took a pass at a correction. We just want to go over our changes. And if we do approve them at the next meeting, which will be in April, then we would obviously get it to legal to take a look at. It's as vanilla as it could be, just to do what we told the voters it would do.
Okay.
Just as an advisory only. Oh, and then there's one more, Jay. We had the NRPC had the transportation presentation. I still have mixed feelings about what I saw. It went into a completely different ideal set of the future of the transportation, maybe with a 20, 30, 40-year outlook. I do see some positive in it. I'm trying to embrace the electric cars, never mind the cars coming to my house and I don't have a car anymore. That to me is a little tough. But it was definitely interesting, like I said, I go from two extremes of it's an attack on my humanity that I can't even get in a car and go where I want versus I'm going to leave this meeting right now and there should be a car waiting for me when I leave here. It's tough for me to grapple with, but I'm going to try to keep an open mind about it.
Right.
So I just don't know what's pushing the change. If it's a federal thing trying to push New Hampshire to change, or is it the businesses forcing us to change? I haven't done enough research on that yet, but.
What is the change? I'm sorry.
I just see a lot of the cars that are now, automated. You're not
Connected and
driving your
autonomous
car
vehicles,
anymore.
that was the
Yeah.
most
We're not going
exciting.
to be able to buy our own car anymore. So I say to myself,
All right. So there's
okay.
like public.
So
use.
a planned obsolescence kind of thing.
We've got a couple of things in a presentation like that. Oh, by the
It was
way,
a lot to take in.
I am drafting a chapter on that for the master plan.
Okay.
But there's kind of what the technologies are, and then there's the spectrum of connected and autonomous from driver assist to fully automated. So there's that, and we know that that's coming. We know it's here, it's happening. But what the impact will be, we don't know. We just don't know. So yeah, for the two of the speakers that we had, they definitely feel that we will reach the point when we become fully automated or almost fully automated and connected, that people won't have their own cars anymore, for the most part.
But it's just a big leap to think 30 or 50
Right.
years out.
So they think it will all be service driven because the vehicles will be
I'll
too
dead,
expensive.
so I won't care.
So,
but
right.
it just felt like people are flawed. We have accidents. There's also technology accidents.
Right.
I feel like I'm being tracked. I know my appliances
You feel
report
like
me.
You are.
We are being tracked. My
You are being
appliances
tracked.
report me. I don't own my image, or I'm on camera everywhere. You know what I mean? So it just seems like the one thing you find enjoyment is to get in your car and go somewhere. Oh, now you can't. And it just seemed like we didn't have a choice. Like it was coming, so you just better suck it up and enjoy. And it almost seemed like the transition where we would be both humans and autonomous, cars on the road. That we were the problem, not the autonomous cars. Is that,
Mhm.
Right.
that period where there's problems, because the humans are on the road. So I think we just walked away but intellectually we know it will be here eventually.
It
So
probably will be.
So let's look at the 10, 20, 30,
Right.
It's just a hard thing to wrap your mind around. The technology's here, but you still want to embrace your humanity and your own decisions and supposedly live free or die. But
Yeah.
But if you can't buy a car, then what's the
the technology's here, the
So
technology.
maybe we can put autonomous cars in this transportation plan, or at least build the roads wide enough to have these things coming.
What we're going to do is talk about it.
Right.
But we really don't know.
We're not
I
there
see,
yet. Yeah.
I see a lot of literature on it, and people reach very different conclusions. Will it improve congestion? Will it worsen it? Will it increase sprawl? I mean, all of these are unknowns. The rate of adoption is unknown. So I think all we can do is recognize that it's out there. There's no recommendation that we can make because we don't know. It's a huge unknown, though.
It is huge,
It's a
and
huge
some of it is
unknown.
going to happen.
What I do think is true, though, is that once the technology starts to be deployed in a real and cost-effective way, the rate of adoption will rapidly accelerate. That tends to be what happens is we take a little bit to get there. But when we get there, I mean, like the iPhone explosion, that's just what happened. It was just before you knew it, it was everywhere. I mean, that's I think is what, so when they say force, that's what forces you, because there's a point where it's the rate of adoption has reached a point where they're not going to produce the alternative anymore. They're not going to
Unless
produce
you're
the video
a
cassette recorder for
multi-millionaire
you
that can
anymore.
afford that.
Right.
You will be right. You're at the mercy of a phone app to call a phone to come, to call a car to come and get you.
Sure.
And I'm watching the Grand Tour. You know, I've watched Top Gear Grand Tour. Did you see it last week?
Yeah.
They talked about this exact thing, about trying to embrace what's coming. And what they said was they had an audience, of 100 people. We all don't have cars. When we leave this meeting, how are we all getting home? There's going to be supposedly all these cars or whatever to pick us up. You know, it's like now it's their timeline, not your, you know,
Sure.
it's just a change. You're right. It's a change.
Change.
Throw us in the deep end, see what happens.
Right.
But you're right. We do adapt to it, whether it's reluctant or not, but I don't know how fast it'll happen.
I don't
But
either.
maybe as we're looking at roads, we should make them wide enough in case these cars start coming. I'm just saying it's something we should look at from
Right.
a planning point of
Well,
view.
or arguably narrower.
I was gonna say that. I feel like
Because-
it'd be-
Yeah, maybe now. Well, not that 30-year period where the humans are still off road at
Yeah.
the same time.
Right.
But everything's getting smaller to be more.
It's
efficient,
crazy.
so-
Yeah, it's just a
Wow.
new thing.
Because the vehicles are connected and can speak to each other, they can actually move closer.
Yeah.
They can, as they say, platoon. You know, they can
It could be
basically be
inches apart or
tailgating all the
something,
way
right?
because they know
Mhm.
to maintain that smaller distance. So,
Again, just getting my mind wrapped around it's an application on a phone. You're going to order your car to show up at a certain time, and hopefully it does. And you know, it's just it was just a different vision than what I had expected,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But it's just,
And
we're
it's
just trying,
okay.
like I said, we're trying to creep up to getting used to the electric car.
Right.
Let's stop there. Like
I will
I think we can
say,
embrace
I
that.
think that's
easier than
a
A
scenario.
driverless car showing up at my house to come and get me.
Right.
Just saying, that's just
Their
way out
assumption
there.
is that the vehicle cost will be prohibitive. That's why they assume that people will go to a subscription service because most people won't be able to afford
Right.
the vehicle. I'm not convinced that that's necessarily true. That's an assumption that, you know, technology, the cost of that technology won't come down to a point that people can afford it. Maybe it is true that it can't, but
In a city, sure, where it's, 30
Yeah.
grand for a parking spot or
Right.
something, but.
So
yeah,
it was a
out here, I don't
fascinating.
know.
Like,
It'd be
oh,
slower.
it was
It's
definitely fascinating.
Right.
I am in technology, but I'm not saying I'm not the first one to adapt to it. Sometimes I have to warm up to it. So I'm just saying it's shocked a lot of people in the
I think
audience.
so. I think
But
probably
we've
the
had
biggest
time to resonate about
The
it.
biggest takeaway, I think, for planning right now, other than being mindful that it's out there, is what the DOT is doing now, which
Mhm.
is, putting in the technology along the turnpike as it makes improvements to allow for the connectivity. That's the kind of thing that we need to be thinking about now. And because that connected piece, that's already happening. That's when, an emergency vehicle can get priority through an intersection because it's communicating.
And the way, the Waze application.
Waze is
You know, when you have
communication.
Waze
Easy Pass is
application, there's a
communication.
policeman
So,
up there. It'll tell you exactly when you're going to get there based on the road conditions,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, it's there.
right. And although Waze is not connected to the vehicle, it's vehicle to vehicle communication through your phone.
Just me personally, and I probably shouldn't weigh in. It's like I don't think I'm bothered by somebody not driving the car. I think I'm more bothered by it's not my schedule anymore. It's when the car can get there, when it's available, its route, that kind of thing. It just seems like you're giving up part of
Potentially.
something.
And
about
again,
yourself.
that's,
you're giving up part of your choices or something.
but that's a scenario. That's all that is it's a scenario that's not an inevitability.
Like I said, the technology I think will be feasible. A point that I'm not questioning that.
Because
It's the humans adapting.
if you're
to
looking
that.
at services, which is what they're talking about, a service approach, if there are many people who feel the way you do, there'll be services to accommodate people who feel the way you do.
But I'm not saying I don't
So-
change. I'm just saying I warm
Right.
up slower, and I might be the advocate later. I don't know, but I'm just saying on its face, just seeing it for the first time, you just kind of get a shock.
Shocking.
You're waiting for the transporter room was the joke. Well, why don't you just skip that phase and go to the transporter?
Right.
'Cause that's probably coming as well.
It's very, very interesting. But
But these driverless trucks, all of
Oh,
our goods are on the highway.
there's
it's
already
coming.
a driverless stop and shop, proposed for Boston. Already proposed, which is really, really interesting. That'll be one of the earliest adoptions that you see. Uber and Lyft type vehicles and delivery vehicles, and then these small retail stores that are basically just driving around or parking, waiting for you to need a gallon of milk. those will be the earliest forms.
Right? Isn't it hard to imagine?
It's very, very interesting.
But we've had a month to step back.
Yeah.
Away from the
That's right.
shock. Right? And think about it. So
So do we
don't
need to
have them
put-
vote that night they see the lecture, because I think you walk out of kind of shocked of what's coming.
So do we need to
But it
put
was a
something in
very
there
good lecture.
about the, like you're saying, like, so if we're trying to get a new traffic light, do we want to put in anything like any new improvements should have that kind of future
Actually, that's a very good
technology
point.
Mhm.
That's a
in
very good
mind?
point.
Because we don't want to buy, say we're buying a traffic light, you know, you
Right.
want to buy one that maybe complies, and spend the money then versus later. I don't know. if
No,
that's
I think
necessary or not.
putting in, I think that's a very good point, is we should be looking at that technology. You're right, we should.
Like if it should be mentioned.
That's a good point.
It should
And-
definitely be mentioned.
Actually, speaking of technology, is there a chapter, anything about like town-owned like internet cable services? You always hear about that kind of fight the towns keep having with the big
I haven't seen the
companies.
master plan
We
yet.
haven't
that
done that yet. I
anything
mean,
that-
we could look at that as part of the community facilities chapter. So that's something
Okay.
that we could look at. There are towns talking about that.
It's part of your commerce, part of.
It could be an
Part of your
economic
travel.
development
Think
chapter.
about it, your
You could put it there
e-travel.
too. You know, you could decide on how, like, we could decide, I guess, where to put that, but
critical
economic
function.
development and community facilities are both chapters that are coming up. So
Okay.
we could, but that's definitely something I think that we could
Where
look
did
at.
we do the telecommunication one? We had one on that, didn't we? Or was that
Maybe
just
we
a?
already did it. I don't know.
We did it, but I don't know if that was part of an existing chapter. I think that was one of our ordinances, right?
I think, and
Yeah,
there
I
was a
think it was.
telecommunications
It had to
ordinance,
do
yeah.
with, yeah.
Okay.
But
But
that's,
it is a
but those, I
critical
mean, technology
component
like
these
that, is,
days
you
to
know,
your
that's certainly something
town's
we could look at.
viability and.
Okay.
And then we've got fun things to think about, like 5G.
Yeah, a lot of stuff coming in.
So
I
it
don't
was
know
a very
if
good
it's
lecture.
needed.
Okay.
I like the technology. I just have to
Good. Right.
see how we fit into it or how we get there. Huh?
Yeah.
So that
More
was
importantly,
that
how-
was one of the reports. More importantly, what?
More importantly, how was the food?
It was excellent. No, more importantly, is how do you get home from one of those things with an autonomous
There you
driver?
go.
Did you see the Super Bowl? Everybody leaving at once.
No.
How do you get home? Probably better than you do today.
Okay, so the Conservation Commission did meet back in the beginning of March. I did not attend that meeting. I did attend the Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee meeting, which was at the end of March. There was one project on there having to do with the Riverfront Landing project up on Nashua.
Yeah.
I guess originally what was proposed, they wanted to have a restaurant or some kind of facility that overlooked the river. And I think that what they're deciding to do with that is they want to change that and build another building on that site, and they want to put in a dog park in there. That's one of the things that they're trying to get through. I think it went through the planning board, I guess, for the Nashua. But yeah, so there's a little bit of a change there. But all in all, that was basically another conversation too that came up at the Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee is to do with the combined sewer discharges. Our sister or brother organization to the south of us, who was the Merrimack Watershed Council or Association in Massachusetts, is looking into this issue very, very intensely. I understand, especially with Manchester's, because there doesn't seem to be any data coming out of Manchester about combined sewer discharge flows that go through the Merrimack. And it's becoming an issue and especially in Massachusetts. I know that. And they're looking at New Hampshire. There's kind of a sort of, who's really, where's this all coming from? Is it coming from New Hampshire? Is it coming from Massachusetts? There's a whole bunch of arguments going back and forth in terms of what's going on with the Merrimack River. The PFOA issue was discussed. We have been having conversations about that. So there's been a lot of discussion about the Merrimack and, the environmental impacts that are, it's been going on. And, the communities that are affected by it, obviously, Merrimack, Nashua, Hudson, Litchfield. So that conversation continues to go on. But so those were some of the issues, the topics that were brought up. And that's it for community reports on my end, committee reports. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Approval of the February 5th minutes is on here.
But we can't.
So no,
That's right.
we can't. So we're going to bypass those. Any other business? Jay, you have anything else?
I do not.
Okay. Oh,
Do I need to go in front of the Board of Selectmen at some point to be appointed as
full-time?
full-time member?
I thought you
I thought we
did.
voted on that, but I never went before the Board of
Oh.
Selectmen.
Oh,
Yeah, you should.
yeah, you should have,
yes.
because I think Tony did.
Was I scheduled and I didn't know?
I don't know.
Oh, I hope not. Steve never said anything.
Yeah, I would check with Joan
Okay.
and maybe even Troy
Yeah.
Brown, the
Okay.
town administrator, and maybe send him an email or something and see if
All right. Yeah, as far
They
as
can
I
put
knew,
you
I
on
was
the agenda
never on
for
the
the Board of
agenda. I hope I
Selectmen.
didn't accidentally skip.
because I know we
something.
voted you guys. We recommended you to go to the Board of Selectmen. So if,
Right. I never got a.
Okay,
I probably should have asked her.
that's all right.
I don't want this.
So
Okay,
yeah.
I'll send them a note.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. Home occupation renewals to sign. I have those. Joan gave them to me. And I don't know, this autumn circle plan to sign revised with correct owner. Do you know anything about that? Anybody?
Managers leaving it for you.
I assume that
These seem to be housekeeping issues. Okay. All right. I may have to stay in, put my signature. I have nothing else this evening. If nobody else has anything else,
Nope.
Well, I guess it's going to be awkward to do adjournment when you don't
You can
have
just-
40.
We need
So you know
Call
what?
it a
I
night.
think we can.
Yield to more members. We need more members.
We need more members. Come on board. No. So I guess we'll just basically close the meeting tonight. And hopefully we'll have a quorum next time and we can proceed from there if that's good with everybody. So thank you for joining us this evening. We hope to see you again in April and enjoy the rest of March and enjoy spring that's coming
Tomorrow. right?
tomorrow.
Yeah, happy
So
spring.
happy spring. Good night. Thank you.